Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We will inshallah ta'ala begin in 5 minutes. I hope you all can hear me inshallah ta'ala. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعني It was reported by Abu Hurairah Lahwan that Rasulullah said, a sign of one's excellence in his Islam is ignoring what does not concern him. Yani, part of the perfection of one's Islam, the merit of a person's Islam is to abandon, to leave what does not concern him, as well by Sahih al-Tirmidhi. You know, Abu Ubaidah rahimahullah related that Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said, one of the signs of Allah's abandoning a slave, one of the signs that Allah has abandoned a slave is his making him preoccupied with what does not concern him. Yani, one of the signs that Allah has turned away from a slave is that the slave finds himself constantly preoccupied and engaged in matters which are none of his concern. May Allah protect us. It is also reported by the Salaf that whoever talks about what does not concern him is truly deprived of not only truthfulness, but sweetness of Iman. And do you know this is the least of the harm of the tongue? Least of the faults, least of the sins of the tongue? I mean, there are far worse things, whether it's gossip, backbiting, immorality, misleading talk, hypocritical talk, showing off, bickering, singing, lying, mockery or humiliating another, arguments. There are a lot more, which is worse, but this is the least. Yet, one of the most common, hence one of the most harmful, because it is underestimated. Ibn Rajab Rahimullah said that this hadith is a basic and important source of good behavior in Islam. In fact, one of the great scholars of the Maliki Madhab said about this hadith that this hadith is one of the 4 hadith that captures within them the perfect code of conduct for any person. Therefore, a hadith which comprise the perfect code of conduct. One of them is whoever believes in Allah and His Messenger should say that which is useful or keep silent. Another is when Rasulullah said to a man who asked for advice, saying, avoid getting angry, saying it 3 times. The third is when Rasulullah said the believer loves for his brother what he loves for himself, and that's the completion of his deen. And the 4th hadith, which comprises a perfect code of conduct, is this hadith. Not to speak of what does not concern you. The amazing part is this hadith explains one of the most crucial aspects of etiquette in Islam, but one of the most overlooked aspects of completing and perfecting our practice of Islam. Not to concern yourself with what is not your business. It's not a matter for you to talk about. When we focus on practicing Islam, focusing on achieving ihsan, excellence, completion of Islam, when we start practicing it, gradually, step by step, when we consider it as important, when you work towards this journey, by focusing on a hadith like these, where Rasulullah has clearly mentioned what completes or perfects one's Islam, then the good deeds that such a person performs multiplies, because such qualities, if focused upon, yani not to speak of what does not concern you, leads to other deeds of yours, other good deeds of yours, to become more weighty and valuable and rewarding in the sight of Allah. So your Islam, the perfection, the excellence of it, is based upon whether or not you concern yourself with what is your concern or not. Now, what is our concern? And that's the question. How would we know? How would you know whether a matter is your concern individually and all of ours collectively or not? Where should we look? You see, the only way to know right from wrong is through Islamic law, not according to one's opinion. So what is your concern and what is not your concern in the sight of Allah is not determined by what you think, what your opinion is. That doesn't matter. It is what Allah has commanded to be your concern. So Islam has already taught us what are our individual and collective concerns and what are not. Many Muslims do not realize that they have to depend on Islamic law to define what they can or cannot participate in, what they can or cannot propagate, what they can or cannot be concerned with. And that's also one of the reasons why a lot of times, while they're so preoccupied, people, when they're so preoccupied with what does not concern them, they end up abandoning what is their obligation, what is their responsibility, what they actually should be concerned with, the rights of others over them, because they're so concerned with the factors, the matters which are not their concern, that it takes away all their time and energy, emotion. They don't have any space to address what is their responsibility, to think of it, to feel for it, to speak of it, to act for it. So the first point to remember, in order to know what is your concern or not, individually or collectively, it's not determined by your opinion. We all have opinions, but that doesn't matter here. It is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and through the Sunnah, the Ahadith of His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. However, to help attain this quality of not speaking about what does not concern one, there are certain recommendations. Okay, there are certain recommendations. So I'm just going to give a gist of the various recommendations given in the Quran and Hadith and the Athar, the remnants of the Sahaba Sahabiyat. Okay, because going into detail of it is going to take entire month. Now, how to attain this quality that you just do not concern yourself with what is not your concern. You don't speak of what is not your concern, which is none of your business. How to attain this quality, how to perfect, achieve excellence rather, in your deen. See, this hadith outlines a valuable approach towards life, especially in our age of information overload. and constant connection through social media, etc. So to recognize the situations in which this characteristic can be applied, you have to, number one, practice some degree of sensitivity and humility. The way you would want people to show sensitivity, empathy, humility in matters which are, sensitive to you. Give the same to them. Give benefit of doubt to them. Imagine there's a gathering, whether it's amongst your family members or it is amongst your friends or just strangers or even at a halaqa or wherever it is, just a regular gathering. People are talking and somebody makes a blanket statement concerning the fact that, nowadays, I don't know what's wrong with the youth. They don't get married on time and they have become so this and this and this. You never know that somebody's sitting in that audience who, qadr Allah, is not able to get married. Not because they don't wanna. It's just not happening for them. Not because, as mostly people make a blanket statement because they have really high, unreasonable standard. It's just not happening for them yet because it's not the decree of Allah yet. They're trying everything and they know that. So it's a sensitive matter for them. But the moment you find someone who's not married or who is divorced or who's widowed, anyone who's single, if you make a blanket statement like that, completely insensitive, without knowing the person, without knowing their background, without knowing what they're going through, and you was like, why are you still single? Why are you not getting married? Or if there's a person who doesn't have children, or there's a person whose children is lagging in something in dunya, or if there's a person who is not working or not earning enough, or if there's a person who does not seem to be healthy. When you look at them, they've gained weight and you think, oh, there must be something, that they're doing wrong necessarily. I mean, you don't even think of the fact there could be something else. Maybe they are trying, maybe they are struggling. Or maybe there's someone who, according to your standard, is lacking something, even though you may be lacking way more. And all of a sudden, you jump to the conclusion there's something wrong with them, or it's by choice, or they have messed up priorities without knowing their story. First of all, it doesn't concern you. So when you practice this etiquette as a Muslim, it will save the hurt. It will save the other from the hurt, but it will also save you from being the aggressor, the oppressor, the zalim, without realizing, doing injustice. So sometimes you just have to be sensitive, just the way you would like others to be sensitive towards your life and the factors would seem to be not according to the worldly perspective complete. In the worldly perspective, success. You want others to be sensitive. You want others to give you benefit of doubt. What about you doing it for them? What goes around comes around. In most cases, sometimes it's a test from Allah. Qadr Allah. But one of the first things you can do is just think before you are about to utter a word of judgment, of even nasiha, unwelcomed advice. First, think of all the excuses you can make for this person, giving them benefit of doubt. I mean, these are basic rights of one Muslim over the other. only then you'll be sensitive enough not to say what is not your concern. And for this, you need a degree of shyness and modesty on your part. Haya in speech protects from a lot of evil of speech. You know, once it is reported in the tafsir, for instance, Mujahid Rahimullah, that once somebody saw the Prophet, Luqman alayhi salam, as even though there's a difference of opinion as to who was the Prophet now, but somebody saw him and surrounded by these followers of his, being respected, to such an extent, this person felt compelled to ask, hey, weren't you the slave of so-and-so? Didn't you used to be a shepherd in so-and-so? How did you get this respectful position amongst the people? And Luqman alayhi salam said, truthful speech and long silence upon what does not concern me. And long silence over what does not concern me. Once Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said that we humans, we are nothing but a compilation of breaths. Every time we exhale, a piece of your life, every time you exhale, a piece of your life, a part of you is lost. How many of our interactions are worthwhile? How many of our interactions and speech are useless? Why would you waste your breath on what is not even beneficial? One of the most beautiful things about the etiquette in Islam and the Sunnah of Rasulullah is that it encourages us to value our time. How many times have you wasted your hours or discussions concerning matters which are not your concern, which was of no benefit in dunya or akhirah? I had a student who was very, very active on social media. One of the most active people on social media. Now, even though you may be listening to me on social media, I don't use social media myself, right? Besides just two things, like WhatsApp or Telegram to stay in touch with my students. So I don't use anything else, right? And the students always forced me that I should use it. Was so fond of it. Used to always use, and this person is on every app, every social media platform, every one, and has thousands and thousands of followers because it is so active, so updated and everything. One day, all of a sudden, she permanently deleted all her social media accounts. Came crying, saying, I need to talk. I need a counseling session. And then vented and vented and vented. She said, I can't believe how much of my mental stress, my emotional stability, rather instability, my physical health, my relationships, the hardening of my heart was caused by my unnecessary speech. Because I wasn't only utilizing all these social media handles only to say good or stay silent. I was very active, always discussing this or that, arguing about this or that, commenting on this and that. I used to spend hours, and because of that, I used to not only delay my prayers, I used to often miss my prayers. Sometimes I'd be so cranky when I was speaking to a family member of mine, I would be really rude with them. uncalled for, because I was in argument with someone on social media, and then somebody from my family said something and I would respond to them. I went it out on them. I didn't realize. It's like a point in my life has come where I have lost many relations. I've ruined many relations. I've ruined my health, my mental, emotional stability. But most of all, I feel that I know a lot more than I practice, and I have no sakina in my heart. But 1 week before this day, deleted all of it. Because I couldn't control it. Some people can control, some people can't control themselves. This person couldn't control. It was like an addiction. Spending all night, all day, arguing, this thing, this, thinking I'm exercising my freedom of speech. But even in the secular world, I can tell you as a lawyer, even in national, international laws, there are exceptions to the freedom of speech out of necessity. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It will be injustice. In Islam also, a person may think they're exercising freedom of speech, but what they're actually doing is that they're enslaving themselves to their own nafs and their own tongue. That's not freedom, it's enslavement. As I said before, true freedom is to willingly, voluntarily, out of love, to enslave oneself to their Rabb, to Allah. And that is true freedom. And you will know this is true freedom because your heart will feel free. Your soul will feel free, not constricted, not adversely affected by what people say or think. So this person, before this day that she had come and, crying her eyes out, wenting out, she said, 1 week I had gone to my village and there was no electricity, and somehow my mobile data had finished, and basically I had no internet. I had no internet. 1 week. There was somebody has passed away, so she was there with her family. She was like, I have never had the barakah in my time, in my life, and the sukoon that I had in that 1 week. And what was missing, and I was never able to give time to my family. I was never able to give time to my salah. I never had extra time. So if you cannot control because things have become that bad, maybe you need to do something drastic till you don't figure it out, till you don't discipline yourself, reorder your priorities. If you're one of those people who's suffering to that extent. But Islam teaches us time management by only following certain etiquette and the sunnah of Rasulullah. In itself, it will discipline you. You don't need any self-help guru or self-help book or whatever to help you out with this. A lot of times when you tell people to follow sunnah, they're like, I don't have time for this. I know I should be doing this, but I don't have time for this. Maybe if you did follow sunnah, you will have the time. Maybe if you did follow sunnah, you will have that ease, that sukoon, that discipline, that order. Maybe then you'll have the barakah, the blessing, the rahmah, the mercy that you are seeking, that you're desiring. But don't say because I don't have time, so I can't do all these voluntary deeds, etc. I can hardly hold on to the mandatory. But it is actually the voluntary deeds, it is actually the sunnah which helps us to do what is mandatory by Rasulullah. This hadith ordains avoiding interfering with the affairs of other people. unwarranted interference into other people's business. Most of the people who do that cause more division and hatred and hurt and harm with the facade of freedom of speech. We should be talking about this. No. What you should be talking about, what concerns the Muslims, the Ummah, individually or collectively, your personal responsibilities and responsibility as a Muslim, part of the Ummah, this community, is already ordained, is already defined in Islam, not determined by our opinions. This hadith also shows us, as Imam Nawawi rahimahullah said, that Muslims should always be concerned with what is beneficial, what is purposeful, what is constructive, and should always avoid what is of no benefit practically in dunya or akhirah, which is of no honor in dunya or akhirah. And I'm going to end today's session with a few words of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah concerning this hadith of Rasulullah, as he said in Riyadh al-Salihin. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah said, know that everyone should only talk about what might lead to benefit, for in that is their benefit in both this world and the hereafter. For that is the benefit of those around them in this world and hereafter. Let me repeat the statement of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. He said that everyone should only talk about that might lead to benefit, for within it is their benefit in both this world and the hereafter. For within it is the benefit of those around them in this world and the hereafter. If you find no true benefit in your speech, not based upon what you think will benefit, but based upon what is considered beneficial, what is considered, mandatory in Islamic law, in the sight of Allah, set by Him. And for that, basically, we need to gain knowledge about Deen. I mean, how would you know what Islam says is beneficial? How would you know what Islam says is mandatory for you individually and as collective, as an ummah? How would you know what Islam says about what is or should be your concern, individually or collectively, unless you have knowledge of it? No wonder why it is mandatory upon every Muslim, male or female, young or old, poor or rich, to gain knowledge of the basics of Deen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us all to speak only when it is beneficial, speak only when it is mandatory, speak only when it's recommended, speak only what is our concern, so that we can attain excellence in our Deen in the sight of Allah, honor in the sight of Allah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.